What's up, you cervicogenic headache cowboys and cowgirls? So, welcome back to another episode of 3 PTs in a Pod. This week's episode, we have our first ever guest interview. Our classmate and good friend, Matt, will be joining us for a guest interview today. So, let's get into it. All right, what's up, guys? We are back, episode 9, 3 PTs in a Pod, plus 1. Today, we'd like to welcome our good friend, Matt, a.k.a. Kenny, a.k.a. Kenneth Hoover, to the set today with us for our first ever Kenny 2 Chains. Any more you want us to introduce? Yes? Okay, great.
More pseudonyms.
So yeah, first ever guest interview this week, guys. Basically, a little background on what we're going to do with the interviews because this is the first one. So basically, my thought is we want to provide you guys like basically a database, right, of experiences from other people, students, experiences who are going through PT school, especially for those of you guys who are thinking about PT school, might still be in high school, undergrad, or those just starting school and maybe wanting to hear some experiences from those people going through it day in and day out who are a little bit further ahead in school than you are right now. That's what we kind of want these interviews to be, just personal experiences. We kind of gave you ours in the first episode, our own personal stories, what brought us to PT school, advice for school. So we just want to give you some more people to go off of, more experiences to learn from. And that's what we want these to be. So light, just having some fun with our friends and asking some questions, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. So Matt, welcome.
Oh, thank you
Hey
for
Matt,
having
before
me.
we start, dude, even though there are millions of people watching this,
Millions.
judging everything you say, don't be nervous,
Perfect.
right?
Yeah,
nervous.
don't
I
be
won't
nervous,
at
dude.
all.
Yeah, it'll be
Keep
fine.
it cool.
You're shaking. I'll keep my shirt on.
Dude, you'll be fine. Please.
I'll keep my shirt on. In that case.
All right, so, all right, Matt. So let's just start with your backstory. Why don't you give us a rundown, what we did in the first episode? Maybe you watched it, maybe you supported our podcast because you're a friend. Maybe you subscribed to help us, subscribe, help us get
Hit the like button.
advertisers, help us get sponsors. So we gave our backstories in the first episode. We kind of took it from where we first decided to get into PT, or the first thought of like, hey, I should do PT school, where we were when that happened, and took us through like when we got in and when we started. So why don't you give us that story of yourself?
Well, it all started on a dark and stormy night when I was there. I'm just kidding.
What were you wearing? I was born for this.
So I would say that it really started, the kind of first introduction to PT school was probably around high school. My mom is an occupational therapist, and I knew I wanted to go in the medical direction. Had literally no clue where I was going to go with that, but I was really big into sports in high school, and we actually had like an athletic training program at my high school that also like taught a lot of the students. It was kind of like partnered with an elective thing. So, I knew I wanted to go into that, so I started looking into athletic training. I was, what's that about? Working with athletes. I've been an athlete my whole life, so, I'm used to that population. High level, perfect, yeah, exactly.
Fencing.
Or,
What was the sport?
it was actually
of choice?
synchronized swimming.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Nice. That was my second guess.
Yeah, second. No, it was primarily wrestling was the number one, but I did
Gotcha.
a little bit of everything.
All right, let's wrestle. Come on.
We got
Alright,
three
right.
wrestlers here.
Clear the table.
You don't have your single.
The
Celebrity
winner gets to
deathmatch.
stay as the third person on the podcast.
But so my mom was an occupational therapist, and she actually kind of got me to come in and shadow some
Okay.
of the PTs at the location where she worked.
While you were an undergrad or in
Yeah,
high
so
school?
when I was in high school,
Okay.
before I went to undergrad, and then also during undergrad, when I was getting ready, when I kind of knew, and I'll talk about that more later on, but when I kind of knew that I really wanted to do PT school. So I went to undergrad at 2 different universities. It was Millersville and Westchester. It was a dual degree program,
Shout out.
biology
He's
and
so smarty with the 2 colleges at the same time.
biology and athletic training. So I
Okay.
have 2 separate bachelors.
Double the girls.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. Keep
Top
one at
shout out.
each location.
There
Thinking
you go.
about taking my shirt off. Keep going, Bill.
But so through the process, during undergrad, I really realized that I liked the continuum of care. Working with an individual, seeing them progress, getting better. Because kind of my two toss-ups when I was an undergrad were really like PT or physician's assistant. So
okay. So you knew going in that you didn't want to stick with athletic
Yes.
training long term. Okay.
Yes, I knew that I had a different end goal. Athletic training would be an awesome kind of stopgap, a great place to get some applicable knowledge,
Mhm.
some functional education. But I knew I wanted to go further because the problem with athletic training is it has very inconsistent hours. You don't really ever know exactly how long you're going to work.
Yeah.
And a lot of the ways that people have been going, and not to talk bad about athletic training, I love it. But a lot of the places, especially locally here, they kind of pay you a salary and then you just work how long you work, and it's
Mhm.
very often you're always over that.
Yeah.
And I would say that happens for PTs too. But the thing is, I feel like you're just more aware of how long over you're gonna work. Whereas an athletic trainer, it's just guess practice got moved this day, now it's this day, and I guess I'm putting in
Some
you know,
weekend
14
tournament
hour-
comes
yeah,
up.
yeah,
and,
exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah, we definitely want to get more into the ATC side and how
Mhm.
it relates to PT. Some other questions for sure.
Yeah, so and then I went through undergrad. I decided I liked the continuum of care, which I feel like you didn't get as a PA. And then I kind of rolled into doing my application, which was a very interesting process. I know you guys have talked about that.
A hellacious process.
Yeah.
Word of the day. Quick follow-up. Did you not choose OT because it's for chicks?
That's a good question. I don't know if I ever even considered OT, which is
'Cause
really
it's for
weird.
chicks.
Yeah, well,
You
obviously,
say.
of course.
Can
Shout
you
out
work
to
with
one
your
of
mom?
our other classmates who
Well, yeah.
came in as an OT,
Yeah.
which we just found out. So,
He might be a good.
That's awesome.
yeah, possibly. Cool. So I guess there was no initial or you just got hit in the head with some revelation that you should become a PT. It was sort of
It all
a
came to me
gradual. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was hoping that we'd get a story like that. We
Oh,
might
just,
drive up the listeners a little
God's
bit. But that's all right. Let's stick with your story. Stick with the
We'll
truth.
delete
that's
your
fine.
part.
Yeah, we'll,
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
edit
edit
that
it
out
out.
and make up our own
Put
story.
something over the top.
Dubbed.
Blink one.
Like those movies when they're saying the
Yeah.
thing and the the subtitles are
matching
just
the words.
completely off.
It's got
Perfect.
All right, so anything more? We in the first episode talked a little bit about the application process. Were there any stumbling blocks along the way, or anything that you could give advice-wise for the application process itself, and sort of what you found going through it that helped or hurt, or things you missed, things you would have liked to do different going back on it?
Well, the application process you guys talked about is a little bit of a bear. The first thing I would say, well, obviously it's online now.
Mhm.
Get all your resources together and get it started as soon as possible. I think that's one of the first things. I feel like, at the very, very beginning, I kind of dawdled a little bit, didn't really get on it as aggressively as I needed to be. And then some of the locations have these early dates, and then they have these hard end dates,
Yeah.
but a lot of them even lock out extremely early. So I think
Yeah.
that's one of the first things. The other thing I did is I overemphasized the GREs,
Okay.
which was an absolutely awful test. But I did fine. But I feel like there's some degree of misconception about what you really need to get into PT school and how much they value that.
In terms of GRE scores?
Yeah, in terms of the score and bringing you into the school. So I'm not saying don't do well on your GREs. I think that it's
they're
important.
bullshit.
It's never one thing that'll get you in. It's
Yeah,
kind of the
absolutely,
accumulation
yeah.
of everything.
Plus,
Yeah.
it's so competitive. I think they just throw out that number to encourage students to obviously try
Yeah.
harder. I think 150 was the score.
You gotta
they
funnel
throw out.
people
For
like
each
that.
section, I think, yeah. And I think, too, some schools look at it, weight it more than others. So
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah, for
questioning the program that you're applying to, your top choices, maybe, I don't know if it's a faux pas to ask specifically what GRE scores you look for when you're talking to them, but it can't hurt,
Mhm.
if they can give you some more input into how much they weight it.
Absolutely.
Just don't give them your name.
Yeah. Or your
A
social
random-
security
A
number.
random
or-
email address.
As
Three
enticing
cookies
as
in a
it
pod
may
at
sound.
gmail.com.
It's a phone call with one of those voice changers.
We'll pay you $5,000 a month to put the 3 PTs in a pod logo on your car and drive around in it. All right. So Matt, what are the 2 or 3 biggest reasons or things you have done to have success in PT school? So 2 or 3 biggest things that have led to your success while in school once we started.
So
If you could narrow it down.
I mean, I well, there's
So
so much,
many.
there's so much success here that no, I think one of the biggest things that's really worked for me is having like a clear division between like school time and like just like personal time. So and I know they.
What do you
kinda-
do in your personal
So
time?
from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Yeah.
is your personal time.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about my sleeping habits. And that's probably in the
We
disadvantage.
talked
Yeah.
about that too.
But I was never the person that could go right from like 8 hours of class to going home and instantly going into studying. I needed to do something at least for like an hour in between that, and I needed to do something right before I went to bed to basically just clear my mind. Push school to the side. Like be a human. Just live life a little bit. But I think a clear division was very important to me. And then as I went through, I figured out that like networking with other people in the class, really getting close with classmates, because it's like a joint experience. It's traumatic for everyone, and it's helpful to approach it like a team.
Matt doesn't
So.
call it friendship; he calls it
Networking. That is a good point, though. I
Absolutely.
don't think we touched on that and like how.
Proves all motor
important-
functions.
But in all honesty, like how important the relationships you do have with your classmates, because that's your initial network of like professional contacts too. I mean, as funny as it may sound for some of our classmates and how we act together, but it really is that initial like network you have going out into the field as a professional to build off of.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
So I do think some people, and not necessarily like our program, but just people I've heard go through PT school, and especially in probably bigger programs, like they aren't as close with some of their classmates, and I feel like you do lose out on a big piece of staying connected with your classmates after school if you're not like taking some time, again, like you said, away from school. Some people get way too like over invested in how much time they need to be spending, like always reading or something. Like take a weekend and hang out with your classmates. Like those like
Absolutely.
those relationships might last you the rest of your life, and everyone's going to be doing different things in their career, so what some person's doing might indirectly like help you down the road in your career. So I do think that's a good point.
Yeah,
And it's
and
gonna
then
help throughout the course too. Like
Oh yeah, for sure.
And one other thing is
study
that
buddy.
Yeah.
like everyone has their own strengths. So if I don't understand something, there's something that you guys may explain to me in a way that's a lot clearer than the way the instructors did. That
Artem's
can
is
be very
neuro.
helpful. Yeah. Of course.
Of course.
And Pete's.
And peds. We'll have our peds expert on next, I think.
There we go.
Our next interview. So yeah, shout out to me for having questions prepared ahead of time.
My notepad's in my brain.
Okay, so let's go on the flip side. What are the 2 or 3 biggest regrets, mistakes, things you wish you would have done differently
Networking with us.
so
Yeah.
far through
Yeah.
our first 2 years
Talking
of
to you
school?
guys.
these 3
Coming on
right
this-
here
coming
are
on this
probably
podcast.
my biggest mistake. Made my biggest
Being here right
mistake
now.
this morning.
Well, I feel like you guys are already gonna know what I'm gonna hint at a little bit here, but I think like personal health. That's kind of the first. That's like yeah, that sounds actually so awful. But like
Personal health and network.
well, just taking care of myself.
Yeah.
In terms of appropriate sleep habits. Not getting a lot of continuous time before class, and then just kind of taking a nap later on during the day, kind of thing. And eating correctly, I think, are like the 2 major things that I would say have set me back or made PT school more difficult. And I know personally for me, that's the first to go out the window when I get like stressed. It's just like don't eat good food. Something that's not good for me. It's just crap. Just
Right.
staying up late, burning the candle at both ends, staying up late, waking up early.
Mm-hmm.
It's not too late to change, Matt.
Well, I would say
That's
that's
true, at
something that
least
I've been working on.
Both of those things are in your control. So what have you done to go about changing?
So one of the first things is I had a really bad habit of not really eating till like 2 o'clock, like 2 p.m. I wake up, go to
Intermittent
class, and
fasting.
everything.
Yeah, some people
Ever
call
heard
it
of it?
Yeah, well, but yeah, so I would, so I started like getting something, like
Yeah.
a granola bar every day, and then I also wasn't getting enough water, so I purposely made sure I bought a water bottle, so I knew like, it's like, all right, I paid for this thing, I'm gonna have to bring it here now, you know, so that was one of the things that I really started bringing with me, to at least making sure I was staying hydrated where I needed to be, and then, you know, getting some food in me appropriately, and then I've for like a period of time, I was getting my sleep schedule under control, and then it's just like, out the window, whatever.
Well, I think each time though it's a little bit easier to go back to it and like progress further the next time.
Sometimes it's tough to like make a lot of changes at once. To,
Yeah.
like, making
Absolutely.
diet changes and like sleep changes. Like, so it's much easier to go like one step at a time. Like once you've got your diet figured out, maybe you can
Mhm.
attack the sleeping patterns.
Yeah.
Well, and
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I think one thing that would help is if I like kind of planned out my meals more, kind of more just like, whatever, I'm gonna figure it out when I get there, when it's time to eat kind of thing, and then it's just like, whoa, well, I don't have any time,
Yeah.
so I guess I'm just gonna do this one push meal kind of thing,
Right.
one button meal.
Yeah. I think too, like separating overall goals into like subcategories or like components of the goal. Like if your overall goal is to improve your sleep pattern, like one goal could be like going to bed by this time each night, or like gaining an extra hour of
Mhm.
sleep somehow
Yeah.
4 nights a week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things like that to lead up and like ladder towards the
Mhm.
main goal can help. Just another point to future potential celebrity guests and how well we take care of our guests on the show. You'll notice the small plastic cup that was half filled with water that we provided.
We're
for
not just
free.
handing that shit
So,
out.
yeah. So, if you're thinking about being a guest or we reach out to you about being a guest, just keep that in mind.
I was
when
hoping
you're
to jump
making your
on the
decision.
Monster endorsement.
Oh, well, yes, maybe
You're not
next
there
time.
yet.
Once you're a recurring guest.
Oh,
Recurring
okay,
guest
alright,
gets
yeah.
the white monster.
Yeah, the platinum
that's-
package.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a follow-up question for that. Sorry to jump
Absolutely.
in.
Oh,
on your
absolutely.
list
Please, please.
here. So not to get personal, but you're getting married in a couple months,
Mhm.
correct?
Congrats.
Yes, thank
Congrats on the
you.
marriage. Do you find it hard to be engaged in physical therapy classes because you already are engaged?
I was wondering where you were going with that. I think it's difficult, and I knew that was something that I was going to have to deal with going into the program. Specifically, and this is going to sound awful, but I'm.
She's not listening.
No, yeah.
Don't
Yeah, she's
worry
not gonna
about
see-
that.
she's not gonna
Definitely
see
not
it.
listening.
We have 50 viewers.
I was gonna say, of all the million viewers, she's not one of them. But yeah, I mean, I almost kind of just say like, look, unless it's like a weekend or something like that, I'm not dealing with this wedding stuff. Like it's on you. You can bounce some ideas off me, but like, don't get stressed. It sounds awful, but it's like don't get stressed and then bring that on to me before like a test or something like that. And one of the things is we did start planning so far in advance that it's a lot, it's a lot
And
easier.
as long as she's like okay with
Yeah.
being in control, I don't see
Right,
it.
if
That's her day. You're just there, buddy.
Well, yeah, yes dear, no dear.
Right.
Like tell me when to be there, what
Yeah,
I'm
just
wearing,
tell me what you're wearing.
kind of thing.
Well, and I mean that that's a team decision. Like if
Yeah.
she wasn't okay with that, she would
Right.
communicate with you. So that
Absolutely.
whole like teamwork plus the communication side,
Yep.
like if that's what works for you guys, like that's the main thing.
Yep.
So it's good.
Yeah, and then we took advantage of like weekends, like you just took a test and then you kind of have like a brief lull. We take
Right.
advantage of that.
Yeah.
Like, we're actually moving along pretty well with that, actually.
Cool. Were you guys engaged going into school?
Yes.
Like starting? Okay. Gotcha. So let's get back to the ATC topic discussion. What would you say are, so again, pros and cons, biggest benefits of being an ATC coming into school, why it would be beneficial to people doing that in their undergrad if it's a possibility, and then was there anything about that that maybe caused you difficulties or like actually was a downside?
Hindrance,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I'll have to think about
Thanks.
that. But Yeah, in terms of advantages, I feel like there's a lot of very clear ones. I did clinical rotations with teams, so I really got that early experience interacting with individuals.
Hands-on.
Yeah, working with people, actually performing the skills, and then also like the other element of like being able to explain it to someone who may not understand the medical stuff. So bringing it from a level here down to a level where an individual can understand. And sometimes maybe they don't really care too much exactly what's going on. Maybe they just want to know exactly how it affects them. So it's kind of important just to get a read on the individual. Some people like to know everything. And then you get like a background of a lot of like foundational anatomy and stuff like that, special tests that really helps the rotation into PT school. Makes it a little bit easier. So I think there's definitely a lot of benefits. In terms of disadvantages, that's an interesting question. I feel like to some degree, if you ever had any and this may be just a generalized disadvantage, but like if you ever have like a teacher that's biased towards a particular method or something like that, and it doesn't match up with maybe the like where you're learning in different areas, sometimes having a foundational knowledge that's maybe incomplete or maybe not 100% correct, or let's just maybe not say correct, but like up to date 100% on the research, it can be difficult to throw that out 100% and then roll right into, okay, this is exactly what I need to be doing now.
Yeah.
And maybe the important part is just highlighting those little things and saying like, I know that I believe it's this way and it's actually this way. So like I know the McMurray's was one where it was like the McMurray test. So it's like in my thought process, or maybe the way I taught or was taught or whatever, is that you're closing down the side you're targeting, but the way we learned it here is you're opening up the side you're targeting.
That's interesting.
So that was one of the things I had to constantly be like, okay, I'm doing it wrong here.
Yeah, and especially I would think if it's the first way you learn something. I think that's why school is important, because it's the first time you're being exposed to some of these things. And it is, I would agree, like the first time you learn something, it's almost harder to get that out of your head than like going back at a later point. So interesting.
Yeah, I mean, then there's always the aspect of getting used to working with people in the medical team. Because the athletic trainers always have to communicate with the doctors, regarding like player decisions, and there's usually an associated physician with each like high school or with wherever you're at, which
yeah, that's a
college,
great
so,
point. I think that's like one of the like weaknesses of a lot of people in PT school, or that something that takes a long time to get used to or like comfortable with is that communication piece amongst other like professionals, not only patients. So
yeah,
good
absolutely.
point. Cool. Do you guys have anything? I can
On a
keep
scale of
going.
1 to 10, how good are you? How good are you at taping ankles?
I actually really like my ankle tape. Now, if you
Classic
Yeah,
18.
No, I was gonna say if you would have asked for anything else, I feel like it could have been a different story. But I feel like I usually, I actually usually do a pretty good job with my ankle tapes, to the point where it's like, I can do it in under 2 minutes. That was one of the big things that we had to do. You had to be able to basically tape, full. I know it's gonna just like it probably doesn't mean a lot to you guys. But basically, if you're taping an entire football team before a game, that's a lot of players, and you need to be able to do it quickly. If you can't do it, quickly, you're wasting a lot of time. But if there's any wrinkles or anything like that, it frustrates me.
I'm also in under 2 minutes type of guy.
Excellent.
Just a different activity.
All right. So let's transition a little bit into thinking about some of the things when we're done school. So what patient populations do you see yourself working with right away out of school, or what?
Ankle patients.
What do you want to work
Ankle
with?
Neuroped ankles.
Patients that love ice bags.
Shake and bake, baby.
Yeah, shake and bake. I feel like I really have an interest in the orthopedic side.
Okay.
And then I also, being an athlete and working with the athletic population, I'd like to do, some degree, like work in a clinic that has like a higher population percentage of individuals who are athletes or, athletic in general. It doesn't have to be necessarily younger individuals, but just like some sort of outpatient ortho that has some degree of sports specialty. I think that's what really interests me. Now, the one thing that I haven't really like said a lot in class is that I actually do like working with kids, like younger individuals.
Second.
So I mean, I've worked with a couple kids at like clinics and stuff, and I will say it kind of has to be more like orthopedic again,
Right.
but you know, sometimes I just feel like I act like a kid myself, so it's easier to like create stupid like activities. Like, I remember like I
Yeah.
was like took a kid who was like getting ready for football, and we were in like the 3-point stance, getting ready and doing some stuff.
Are you a
But-
Penn State football fan?
I am.
Oh.
Well, there you go.
Oh.
Likes kids.
At least it's not Maryland.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
Um, yeah, so
Good turn.
you
Did
know.
you ever
Yeah,
think
there
about
is.
getting your SCS, like the sports clinical specialty?
Yeah, you know, I've thought about that a lot. I'm not
'Cause
100% sure.
You have an upper hand in that because you have to be an ATC or EMT certified to even go
Sit
for
for the
that.
test.
Yeah, because then you need like on-field experience, I
Yeah.
guess. Or
Mm.
you have once you get your SCS, you have the ability to like do on-field stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I have thought about that, and I think that that would be something that I might approach like a little bit later. I feel like I just need a break from school
Yeah.
right when we get out. I mean, it would probably be smarter to just roll right into that and continue through and just get it done.
Like a residency type
Yeah,
program.
it'd probably be smarter to do that because you know, there's always the possibility of maybe not wanting to,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
do that. But I need a break from school after this, I think.
Yeah. I'm same thoughts on residency programs, but that's also, I guess, my situation being older and
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
45 is a
yeah, 45 to just be getting started is tough. Gotta make up all the time I can. All right, so a couple of questions to wrap it up, unless if there's any before we hit the wrap up questions, any off-topic questions that we're curious about having Matt answer, or we good to throw
Top 5
up
in the class.
Oh, sheesh.
Straight for the throat.
That'll be our exit question
Top
Yeah.
5 hottest guys in the class.
All
Go.
right.
on this podcast.
Keep it progressive.
Top 3 are right here, obviously.
Well, goes without saying. So a couple things, Matt, to wrap up. Number one, just sort of an overall general thing. What do you want to like achieve in your career as a physical therapist? What's sort of what do you envision for your career? What would you like to achieve out of being a physical therapist?
So, I mean, you know, as I talked about earlier, one of the driving factors for the decision for me was, you know, the continuum of care. So I really want to just get practicing, honestly. I mean, I know everyone does, but I really just want to see, like, to firsthand, you know, make that difference in people's lives. So that's just like a very short-term thing. But, you know, my mom's always talked about her, like, neuro patients that she's worked with and the returns you get there. So it'd be nice to really, like, see that firsthand and kind of actualize, you know, all the work that, you know, we put into it and really make a difference. But, you know, long term, I think I want to get some years under my belt, you know, get some experience. And then, I mean, personally, I'd like to move down to North Carolina. And I know I have some family down there, but I also know like, my immediate family's, you know, looking to move down there too. And we've toyed around with the idea of doing like a family style clinic. So my fiance has a
awesome.
master's in clinical counseling.
Yeah.
You know, my mom's an occupational therapist, so it's kind of just like a one-stop shop, you know, like location. You know, you get OT, PT, and like, you know, mental health. So
Yeah, it's
maybe
really
we
cool.
could throw a dietitian in there or something.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, long term, maybe, you know, something along that regards. You know, I think would be very interesting. But you know, and maybe the specialty Artem talked about, you know, looking at going into that. You know, that's something I'll have to reevaluate in the future. But
Sure.
you know, really just kind of at this point, getting there and helping people, because I feel like we've spent so long in school. It's just like, you know, what's it worth?
Just finally start seeing that like
Yeah,
payoff.
yeah.
Start realizing that. Cool.
$20 a square foot. Remember
Yeah,
that.
all right.
Yeah.
I'll remember
Careful
Are
where
you guys
you-
hiring or?
Yeah. Wait, I got my horizon goal now. So.
Yeah, there you go. That's cool though, man. That's interesting.
That is interesting.
So before we wrap it up, any overall closing remarks or advice for people thinking about applying to PT school, people just getting started in PT school, or just PT people in general?
Buy these.
These are
huge.
Quarter
are
zips.
awesome.
Under Armour
Yeah,
quarter zips.
they're really nice. This is
That's not a plug
it's
either.
insane.
But it could be
Insane.
Under
Could
Armour.
be.
But
Under Armour Monster.
yeah,
Under Armour.
new.
Shout
there
out
you go.
Baltimore.
Perfect. Yeah, there we
Shout
go.
out Terps.
I think one of the first things that I would say, even going back to the interview process, so one of the things that I did is I actually, and this is a kind of a new angle a lot of people don't think about, but I actually went in and purposely asked to come in and sit in on a class, you know, to meet the teachers, maybe like do like a, you know, informal kind of interview, because the idea is, you know, granted, they're trying to pick you, but you're also trying to pick them. So it's like, it's almost like to some degree, show me what you got, make me want to come here, you know, kind of thing. And I know a lot of, you know, a lot of the people in the class, they maybe didn't have a ton of choices to pick from, but, you know, to some degree, I mean, I came in here, had to sit down with our teacher, you know, ahead of time, and I feel like a week or two later, it was like I got an acceptance letter.
Okay.
So I think that that's one of the things, you know, be very active and aggressive in pursuing, you know, like your advancement opportunities, the education. And then in terms of like a PT school, I think managing your time, you know, these guys have talked about this before. I mean, that's something that I would say that I struggle with. I kind of do more just like off the cuff, you know.
Yeah.
But managing your time is insanely important. And then finding the way that is most appropriate for you in terms of your study habits. So like, you know, if you're a visual person or like, you know, one of the things that I recognize about myself is that I don't truly know what I don't know until I'm trying to teach someone else how to do it. So it's like, you know, maybe I need to visualize it, maybe I need to try to do it, but then the next final step to make sure that I know what I think I know is to try to teach someone else how to do it. So I think that's one of the things that I recognized early on that I pushed towards. So then it's just like, you know, maybe I find a situation where I'm like, oh, I don't actually know, you know, and then I can go back and fill that in. And then the other one thing that I would say is that, like, and I think this kind of comes through from the athletic training side, is that don't be afraid to make mistakes. So I mean, one of the things that I recognized after I was no longer an athletic training student, but a licensed athletic trainer, is that like school is the safest time to make mistakes. You know, and I'm not saying like, you know, mess up on a safety issue or something like that, but I'm just saying, you know, like,
You get 3 kills.
yeah, exactly. But like, you know, do something wrong. I you know, like just get out and like, you know, practice. Be like the person that gets called up. I mean, I know we have a classmate that actively steers into that, but you know, in all respect to him. But you know, don't be afraid to make mistakes now because it's safe at this point, and you want to get those questions and those mistakes out so you know what to do correctly when you become the person who's actually like, you know, like the buck stops here, you know, kind of thing. So I think that, you know, those are some things that I would highlight that'd be important for
I like that.
individuals.
You can make a shirt out of that.
Good
That
stuff.
one line that you said.
Absolutely. All right, Matt. Thanks
Merch.
for being here.
Merch is coming soon.
Yeah.
Merch is coming soon. 3 PTs in a pod T-shirts coming soon to possibly to an online store near you. Matt, thanks again
Yeah,
for
thank you.
coming. Respect the hell out of you, dude. Honestly,
Thank
I think you're gonna be one of the best PTs in our class
Of all time.
Thank you.
and of all time. But honestly, I think between like how much you care about patients and like that definitely shines through, and just people in general, like always being willing to help out other people in the class and doing all that stuff. I mean, you're gonna be a great PT. So looking forward to seeing you throughout your
Yeah.
career.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thank you for bringing me on here. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I think it was a new lifelong goal. Once this started up, I was
Check it off your bucket list.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, I have to be on this show.
Now you just have to go to North Carolina. That's
Yeah,
it.
That's
absolutely.
it. Yeah, it's the only goal left on the horizon.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of 3 PTs in a Pod. Until next time, see you later.